Welcome, friends, to another episode of the DPZ show. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join with me and listen to me talk about sports cards. I apologize ahead of time. I do have a bit of a cold. It's been lingering for the last couple weeks, so bear with me through the coughing if I need to do so. But today's episode is going to be walking down the pathway of leveraging yourself to buy sports cards. We've talked about it in the past. I think most people have talked about it. What it means to leverage your collection or to leverage yourself to buy cards. I think it is a very, very bad idea. And I think with the prices of some of these cards, and as the market corrects, can still continue to correct, there's people out there that feel like it could correct quite a bit more. There's some folks that are feeling like maybe the correction has occurred and prices have settled. There might be an opportunity to now start buying as prices might continue to go up. I think it's important to understand that no matter what the price points are for cards, how are you buying them? How are you acquiring them? And by what means? Are you using revolving debt? Are you using fixed debt? Are you borrowing against your cards through different third-party companies like Alt or PWCC? How are you going about acquiring your collection? I think most of us, 99.9% of us, will have to sell cards to buy cards. I don't believe it's ever a justifiable thing to spend the kind of money, $5 to $10, $2 to $3 to $4 to $5,000 on some of these cards, where that money could be, especially if you have a family or you have other responsibilities fiscally, to allocate that much money towards a piece of cardboard. Now, granted, there are some pieces of cardboard that are worth quite a bit of money and could be good stores of value, could be investments, depending on what you're talking about. Like I've said in prior videos, I think there's not very many of those. I think at best it's a store of value. At best, a store of value. And I think we need to be mindful of that and start just being appreciative of what we have and buying and collecting things that we enjoy and love. But how the means by which we get them, I think, is what I want to talk about today. So, thinking about that, I had a conversation. I will not reveal the source of this conversation, and because that person wanted to remain anonymous, but it is a person that is within hobby circles. It has been collecting for many, many years. Worked for many different companies and has seen firsthand how this was played out, and basically where the sausage is made, so to speak, and understands the positioning that a lot of collectors are in and over the past few years have gotten into and gotten out of, and sometimes made very poor decisions on how to acquire and how they acquire their cards. I think it was quite alarming to me in this conversation that we had that he alluded to that a lot of collectors are in debt, buying a lot of the cards that they have. There are a few that are not. I think folks that might have been in the hobby well before the boom, set up pretty nicely, saw a lot of their collection go up in value, might have sold into strength at that point and had capital on the sidelines waiting to deploy into buying more cards or into, short-term instruments, CDs, time deposits, bonds, funds, things like that. I think there's opportunities for that. But I think some folks might have taken some of that money and redeployed it into the market. Hopefully not at the peak, but I think people were still buying and selling in the last few years. And most folks are probably using some of the capital from those cards to buy into the bigger cards, or vice versa. Or maybe folks were buying cards throughout the whole last few years and have consolidated all the way through as time has gone on. They've taken, okay, I'm not into this card as much as I thought I would be. I've changed my mind. Collectors do that. And they take those cards now and they I'm going to sell these cards in order to acquire, said card that now I want, or I'm going to start PCing a certain player, or I've been PCing a player, or I want to PC a player. So now I'm going to use these cards and I'm going to take the capital from the sale of these cards and go buy more cards. Now that is the typical way to do it. I think most of us do that. And I think that's a healthy way to do it. Now, sometimes you're making an offer on a card. Again, I always like giving credit where credit's due. I listened to an episode of my friend Chris Hoge and Josh on the crossover recently, and Chris was alluding to the dilemma you have when you're trying to buy a card and trying to make an offer on a card, and you have to free up the capital to do so, but you don't want to sell those cards before the offer is accepted, or you've come across an agreement on what the price should be. So you almost have to make that transaction happen, or consummate that transaction before you can then move on and sell the cards that you need to pay for that. That happens a lot, and it's a little risky because now you're gonna have to front load that somewhere and then go sell these cards and then pay it off. Typical thing that happens most of the time, you're fine because you can liquidate, pay off, and move on. Now you have the card you want. You found it at a good price. You negotiated it. However you want to look at that. That's a typical way to do it, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing at all. I think it's kind of what we have to do sometimes. You have almost like having an operating line of credit to get the card, go sell, pay off, move on. Very typical. What I'm talking about is just leveraging up and having debt that's accumulated because of the cards that are accumulated. I think that is where you want to be careful, because then you start digging yourself into a hole. And once you dig yourself into that hole, it's hard to get out of. And you can start compounding that, going, well, I'm already here. I might as well just tack on an extra 2 or 3 here, 2 or 3 here, 4 or 5 here, whatever it may be. I'm talking thousands or hundreds. You tell me. Everybody has a different gauge in what, with the playground that they're playing in, the sandbox that they're playing in, when it comes to capital and money and cash and what they're comfortable with. But either way, you can still build that up quite a bit. If you don't have a way of getting out of that, if you don't have a secure job, if you don't have a situation where you feel confident, if you don't, things could happen in life. You want to have that rainy day fund. You want to have, a lot of folks say, and as a banker, I will tell you, as a former mortgage lender as well, you want to have at least 6 months of your principal and interest. If you have a rental, same thing. You want to tack that on, add that up. You want to have at least 6 months of those, and that from an underwriting standpoint, that's what they look for. At least 6 months. I like to weigh on the confident or the more conservative side. You should have 12 months of just that number. I think you should have about 6 to 8 months of your living expenses, meaning how much it costs to live. To buy the groceries, to pay for all the bills, the things that you need. Obviously, in the event that, say, you just weren't working any longer, or your spouse wasn't working any longer, now you needed to take care of your family. You needed to feed them, clothe them, shelter them. Those are things that are important. So cards are not going to shelter your family, right? I think everybody knows that. I'm not saying anything that's eye-opening or it's not. This isn't the first time someone's heard this being said. But I think it's important for us to be thinking about that as collectors. I think it's important for us to be keeping in mind our fiscal responsibilities around us and being providential in that sense. So there is opportunities to buy some pretty cool cards right now, and the prices might still settle yet, but there still is a pretty cool opportunity. I won't deny that. We all get caught up in that. It's a lot of fun, but we still need to be mindful of where is our cash better set. Is it better set into a 5 or 6% return on a CD, or is it better set in some piece of card, a card? I say a piece of cardboard, but we all get excited about that piece of cardboard. The shinier it is, I know I love it. But is that the best place to put that money and deploy that money? Are we being, having a pitch count is something I was told in the very beginning. Having a solid pitch count as to what you should be buying, when to say no, when to stop. Maybe there's a few things you need to move to get out and maybe get out of some debt. Maybe you have some debt accumulated. You're like, you know what? There's 2 or 3 cars I don't really need. I like them, but I don't need them. It would feel better to just sell them and pay down that debt. Do that. It's a freeing experience and exercise. I've done it myself. Just pay it down or get rid of that or sell this. There's things you can do to get yourself. The cool thing about these cards and the market that we're in, or just in the hobby space in general, is especially as long as they're graded, which is another whole other conversation, raw versus graded. We'll tackle that another day. But there's opportunities for you they're liquid. You can sell them. You can send them to Pro Spin or MC Sports Cards or all the different, auction houses, Golden, PWCC, Alt. You can sell and auction off your cards fairly quickly. If you need the money right now, you can auction them. And there's lots of different ways of doing that, and it's quick and easy. And you can get that cash in your hand. You can, cards are fairly liquid. If you're selling them for $10, $5, if you're selling them for $2,500 or $5,000, there's a way to get that money back if you have said cards. You still have something in your hand that is worth something. Now, is it worth exactly what you paid for it even a few weeks ago? Who knows? Depends on the card you're buying, but there is an opportunity. So this is more of a conversation I'd like to have with all of you, just a healthy conversation about how much money should we be spending on cards? I know there's going to be a lot of folks in the comment sections like, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. I get that. And you know what? If you are someone who has been very, very strict, who's been very disciplined, good for you. That's awesome. I think that's a wonderful thing. And that should be celebrated. That's a great thing. I think a lot of folks haven't. I think a lot of folks might not want to admit it. I think a lot of folks might be a bit ashamed of their behavior when it comes to buying cards. But there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's always a way out. It just might come down to having to sell some cards. It might come down to having to maybe move some stuff around to get yourself in a position where you feel a little bit better. Because if you feel a little bit better about that, you're gonna have more fun in the hobby. You're not going to be so concerned about the posts that come out saying cards are going down even further or whatever. Maybe it's consolidating down to just a handful of cards that you just truly love and you'd never want to see go. That might mean just selling a handful of those cards off to get yourself in a position where you feel more comfortable. And I encourage you to do that if that's how you're feeling. If you're having those doubts, if you're having those thoughts, you should do something about it. That would be my advice. And people have talked about that before, but I think it's a healthy conversation to have right now. And it's an evergreen conversation to have. This video will air on the Sports Card Dad Network, in my hopes, but it will also live on my Melted Wax podcast page, where a lot of the videos I do with Dustin and with other folks live there. The Grail series and different videos from the past, I'm planting there, they're living there. This will be another one of those videos I think should always be a timely video at any time. It's an evergreen conversation. We should always be, not just because the market is what it is right now. When great times are great, you should always be fiscally responsible. So what kind of pitch count are we giving ourselves? I'd love for you to have a conversation in the comment section below. I want to hear what you all think. No matter where this video lives, in what comment section there's going to be two different ones, likely. I still want to have that conversation. I think we should all be having that dialogue with one another. Why not? Let's talk about it. It's okay. I know you have your name on your tag there for YouTube, and when you comment, there's your name, but there's nothing wrong with having this conversation with one another. There's nothing wrong with encouraging one another to be more providential, more responsible. There's nothing wrong with making the mistake and fixing it. Nothing wrong at all. And this is a good spot, a good place, a place of, shouldn't be a place of judgment. And if you want to come into the comment section hot and getting after everybody, don't. I mean, if you want to do it, fine. I mean, it's a free world, do whatever you want, but that's not going to be helpful for other people that might be on that fence of going, should I be doing this? Should I be rethinking? Coming in there making people feel guilty is just not the way. Let's let the comment section be an open forum, healthy conversation, a place where we can encourage one another. I think usually comment sections are a place where people just, I'd like to say some of the comment sections that I've seen in my videos, at least, there have been great comment sections. A lot of great people having great conversations. So I have a lot of high hopes for the comment section for this video. I hope that it's helpful. I hope this conversation just spurs another conversation. I think a lot of the time when we're talking out loud about sports cards like this, there's nothing new. There's no revelation that's happening here. It's nothing groundbreaking. Okay. These are just the same old conversations and topics that we're rehashing. But I think it's okay when it comes to this kind of conversation, because it's okay to be reminded, to be grateful for what we have and be excited about what we have, but also start to make, do that inventory. Do I really need X many cards? I'm constantly doing it. I get excited and I buy stuff and then I sell it. It just happens. Being a collector, that just happens. It's kind of part of it. But being responsible fiscally to not put yourself in a hole or dig yourself a hole is also very important, right? So I think it's a good idea for us to have a place where we can all kind of come and go, all right, let's have that conversation with one another. You don't have to share all the specifics, nothing wrong with that. But if someone has been in that situation and they've dug themselves out, comment, tell us about it, talk to us about it, let us know what you did. How did you do it? How did you come to that realization? How did you make those decisions? I think that'd be great. I think it'd be very helpful. What I love about our hobby community is there's a lot of fellowship. There's a lot of camaraderie. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I think we should continue to lean into that, because yes, there are disagreements. There are people that have, different opinions and they kind of go back and forth. That's going to happen in any, community forever. That's just the way, we're not all the same. We're not all wired the same. We're all going to be a little bit different. And that's okay. But in this community, I do see a lot of people that want to help, a lot of people that want to lift others up, want to help others. So I think in that spirit, Let's use this comment section for this particular video to be a place where we help one another out and have great, healthy conversations about how do you spend money on cards? What's the proper way to do it? Do you have a suggestion of how you go about it? Is it just sitting back when you see a card you like and going, nope, I'm going to give myself 2 or 3 days to think about that card before I buy it? Or getting an offer on a card that you've been looking at for a long time, but you know it's not the right time to get it, but you have this fear of missing out, that if you don't grab that card because it doesn't come out very often, it doesn't come for sale very often, if I don't get it now, I'm never going to get it. I'm going to need to get this thing and figure it out later. That's a typical collector. I feel like that's a typical feeling a collector will have when they see a card for sale. Happens to all of us. But do we have to always say yes and buy it? I don't think we do. And exercising that discipline is kind of, there's a freedom in that. There's something that happens when you do that. It's freeing, and explore that feeling and try that out. You know, I know it's not easy sometimes. Or are we caught up in the moment? Are we being influenced by people that are trying to, you know, guide us to certain auctions or different sets or different cards, or people talking about different cards on stories, and we get excited and we want to learn about them? And, you know, I know I get excited about that kind of stuff. I love to learn about, you know, unique, obscure sets and things of that nature. So there's great stories like, you know, the Wharf, you know, he has awesome stories about cards and different sets. I love, you know, reading about that. Yeah, it's the no comps auctions that the Wharf has is also really great. You know, really neat stuff. You know, I just signed up for the newsletter. I love that kind of stuff. I get excited about learning about the hobby and different things that I just didn't know about. Or Find Your Trove, another guide. You know, I'm not sponsored by anybody, obviously, but I find his videos really entertaining. It's cool to learn about players, cards. You know, you got Adam Gray who talks about stuff. You got Jeremy Lee who's always talking about. You know, my buddy Jeremy's always got all kinds of good stuff to share. There's all these great videos where people are explaining cards and the history behind the sets and all that stuff. A lot of great stuff out there. But does that mean you have to go buy said cards? Not necessarily. You can still learn about them. Maybe put it down on a list of a card that you might want to look into later, because they'll probably come up for sale later too. They're not going to go away forever. Is there a discipline we can all have where we just enjoy and can consume the hobby without consuming cards? I don't know. I might be crazy. This might be crazy, but I don't think it's crazy to have a plan and to be fiscally responsible. So that's all I had. That's all I have. This is going to be a short little video, 17 minutes. Right now we're sitting at 17 minutes. I think this could be a great opportunity for us to have more conversation in the comment section than me talking right now, because I'm saying nothing that you have all haven't heard before. So again, not feeling all that great. So I'm just going to kind of cut this one short. I hope you enjoy this video. I hope it's, you know, it springs some sort of thoughts to mind and inspires you to maybe have this conversation. Share it, talk to your friends about it. Am I wrong? Am I right? Am I neither? Please let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to the Melting Wax podcast. Obviously, subscribe to my buddy Dustin, the Sports Card Dad channel. All great stuff there. Appreciate you taking your time to listen today. And you can find me on Instagram at PC with DPZ. Anytime, talk to me, DM me. Always here to have a conversation. Have a very Merry Christmas. Enjoy holidays with your family. Hanukkah, whatever it is you're celebrating, enjoy it with your family. And have a very happy New Year. I'll talk to you all later.